Good afternoon, Rotarians and guests. My name is Debbie Fu and I'm your MC for the day. We'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri and the Burrunong people of the Kulin Nation and also pay our respects to elders past, present and future, and extend that respect to all Indigenous Australians present today. Welcome to our hybrid meeting and those online and to those in the room. Thanks today will be given by Barbara Eurondis, followed by the Loyal Toast presented by President Philip Cornish. Please ensure your glass is charged.
Thank you. Now, my reflection today is more of a rambling than a reflection. There's so much happening in the world. There's conflict, there's wars, there's hurricanes, there's starvation, climate change, diplomatic meetings, and the Melbourne Cup. So where do I start? On a professional level, it's been a very stressful couple of weeks. I've had 2 scheduled handovers that haven't happened yet, discussions on building sites that go round and round in circles where don't achieve very much, projects delayed, disgruntled clients, poorly organised builders, and the architect trying to keep the peace. So my suggestion today is just take a deep breath and relax. Flared tempers don't produce happy results. Considered options and well worked through ideas and agreements do. So does kindness, consideration and generosity. So for fellowship and good food, in these uncertain times, let's be kind, let's be considerate and let's be generous. Thank you.
Rotarians and guests, if we could be Rotarians and guests, a toast to Australia and Rotary International. Australia and Rotary International. Thank you. Please be seated. We'll be breaking for lunch and we'll reconvene at 1:15. For those online, please take up the offer of the Zoom rooms, which will open shortly. Thank you. And we're off. So, members, visitors and guests, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to our 18th meeting of this Rotary year and our 5,101st club meeting in our 105-year history. It's great to see you all here today, including those online. Our guest speaker today is Henry Dwyer, a successful thoroughbred trainer. I was just asking Henry whether it was harder to deal with his human employees or his horses. He said the horses are fine. Henry will be speaking on Ballarat to Buckingham Palace and Longchamp, France, and will be more fully introduced shortly by our Chair of the Day, past President Quinn Scalzo. Would you please join me in acknowledging and making Henry welcome. We have other visitors and guests and members today, and I invite you and your host to stand. I assure you, you'll all get an equal amount of applause, but what have I knocked down there? All right. Doesn't seem to be anything relevant. So if we could ask Roswitha Horgan, a guest of David Horgan, and David, if you could both stand, that would be good. Andrew Bostock, a guest of Peter Dakin. Tim Holland, a guest of Peter Hanlon. Now I'm going to do a collective one here. The Scalzo family, who are guests of Quinn and schoolmates of Henry. So Ollie, Michael, David and Chris, if the Scalzo tribe could stand up. And other guests of Quinn are Todd Dewberry, Nicholas Hullett, Matt Ball, Luke Ball and Andrew Barnett. And Quinn, I think you deserve some applause too for bringing everyone here today, so that's great. Thank you. Now I'm going to call on our expert in kindness, Reg Smith, past president, to tell us more about the upcoming special event planned around our World Kindness Day. Thanks, Reg.
Thanks very much, President Adrian. As President Bill, I was looking at Adrian.
You have a lot of flashbacks.
It has a big impact on me. It's great to be here, and thanks for this brief opportunity. Every year we celebrate spring and the time of year with an event for the Hush Foundation. The Hush Foundation is a music charity, essentially, that its mission is to improve the culture of healthcare, make it kinder. And this year's event is at 5 o'clock on Thursday the 13th, and that's a twilight meeting to our reception, where there'll be plenty of conversation, plenty of opportunity to socialise, and lots of great music. So you'll have a flyer on your table. Please have a look at it, and if you're available that night, we'd love to see you there. And you'll have a great time because you'll be rubbing shoulders with some fairly senior people from the medical community and care community around Australia. So thank you, Phil, and I'll look forward to seeing everyone there. Thank you.
Thanks, Reg. It's always a great event. So, on to some club business. AGM, Nominating Committee. I'm pleased to advise your nominating committee has met and put forward Branko Panic, who's accepted as President nominee 2027-28. So Branko, I reckon that's stand up. And take it from me, you'll be busy. And also, hopefully people won't forget you like Reg did. You used to work in geriatric units, Reg. We'd be asking you who the Prime Minister is at the moment. So anyway, as a reminder, we are currently calling for nominations to the Board of Directors. Any member who can make a nomination seconded by another member. We are now only 3 weeks out from that exciting event, our AGM. All nominations must be to the Honorary Secretary Sue Smith by 2:10 Wednesday the 12th of November for election at the 19th of November AGM. So I'd like to call on our own Bruce McAvaney, Adrian, who's already been mentioned, to take over the meeting and call the 2025 Melbourne Cup. And Adrian McAvaney Nelson, it's over to you.
Well, thank you, Philip. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a beautiful summer, or not summer day, it's a beautiful sunny spring day. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the race that builds goodwill and better friendships. It's the 2025 Rotary Melbourne Cup. It's a full field this year with 16 presidents, all well trained by Joe Mavros. And they're coming up to the starters' gates. We're waiting. And they're off. Bounding out the gates, it's Peter Dakin on Create Awareness, Take Action. He's out fast, taking action before the starters' flags even dropped. Classic form from this thoroughbred. Hot on his heels, Bob Glindeman on Lend a Hand. He's right there on the outside. That's it, Bob. Looks like he's lending a hand to Peter too. But Bob's still keeping one hand on the reins. Now Chris Wong on Lead the Way, tucks in neatly on the inside rail. What a natural mover, showing real leadership as they head into the first turn, and he is now leading the way. Next, it's Building Communities, Bridging Continents. That's a long name runner, but Phil Endersby is striding out beautifully, sailing through like a pro. Behind him, Austin Burley with Reach Within to embrace humanity. He's reaching deep, reaching wide. He's got arms wide open. Might be slowing him a touch, but the crowd loves this old grey. Clive Weeks and Peace Through Service, calm, composed, keeping out of trouble on the inside, a true peacemaker's pace. Can he engineer a win? It's Be a Gift to the World with Peter Rogers is starting to unwrap a beautiful run now down the back straight. He's got ribbons flying everywhere. What a sight. And here comes Quinn Scalzo with Rotary Serving Humanity. Like Peter Rogers, he's in the blue and white stripes from the Kangaroo stable. Steady, reliable, all heart. Quinn's finding his rhythm beautifully. Moving up through the field now is Rotary Make a Difference. It's Mary Barry. Yeah, the Irish stayer, small strides but big results, and you can see the difference she's making as they head for the half mile. Robert Fisher on Be the Inspiration. He's firing up the crowd, lifting spirits, plenty left in the tank as they start to turn. If you've got money on this nag, he's giving every child a future. Kevin Sheehan and Rotary Connects the World. He's linking up beautifully with Serve to Save Lives on his inside. That's Reg Smith. They're galloping side by side, forming partnerships all the way down the track. Classic teamwork from these two. Now here comes Imagine Rotary. It's Adrian Nelson. He's dreaming big. The crowd's imagining the win. Could this be the move of the race? But wait, with 2 furlongs to go, here's Chris Soteropoulos with Create Hope in the World, storming home down the straight. The crowd's roaring. You can feel the optimism from here. Half a length behind but closing. It's the magic of Rotary. Catherine Baxter's pulling a few tricks out of the saddlebag, conjuring a big finish down the home straight. But right on the far outside, here comes Unite for Good. Unite for Good. It's Philip Cornish. He's uniting the field, bringing them all together for a mighty Rotary finish. They're across the track, neck and neck, stride for stride. It's Unite for Good. Create Hope in the World. Imagine Rotary led the hand. Unite for Good. They hit the line. It's a photo finish, ladies and gentlemen. The stadium holds its breath. Me too. Waiting for the stewards. And here we go. Picture perfect. It's a Rotary dead heat. No winners, no losers, just 16 champions galloping for good, making a difference, and every Rotarian crossing the line for service above self. Rotary Melbourne proving once again, when we ride together, everyone wins. What a race. And now I'll pass on to our chair for the day, Quid.
Unbelievable, Adrian. Congratulations. What a hard act to follow. But we've got the trainer right here, and I'm certain that we will succeed in getting you to enjoy the afternoon once Henry speaks. I thought I'd just give you a little bit of background to Henry. All of you will know, and you may have read some of the accolades, all very well deserved, and certainly the articles, if you start Googling now, his name come up thick and fast. But I thought I'd just give you a little bit of the background to Henry, because Henry has got a very long history involvement in this industry, and probably as usual, because of the great success he's had in recent times, he really doesn't get the credit for starting as a 12-year-old in the under cricket match that he was playing with my son David, and Henry came across and said, I've got a tip, number 9 and number 5, can you put it on for me? So he did start early. Pretty early those days, under 12, Henry. Henry was educated at Xavier College. He was there from 94 to 2001, and then moved across to Melbourne Uni, where he did a Bachelor of Commerce. So clearly he was on the way, and he recognised that he needed to get himself pretty well equipped in the area of knowing the numbers. His father, the late Michael Dwyer, some of you would know, was a chartered accountant, and was a great mentor for Henry all the way. Even his grandfather over the years had been involved with racehorses. But Michael had a number of horses with his friends and colleagues at KPMG, so it was always a good opportunity to learn about horse racing in the family, and I'm certain Michael to this day would hope and pray that all of that education Henry has delivered some real value. So a great opportunity to work with his father in those early days. Michael was a very well-known Victorian. He worked in Indonesia, he worked in Adelaide, he worked in Melbourne, and at one stage he was appointed an ASIC commissioner. So he was very, very well known, on the board of various philanthropy organisations. So Michael was, as you know, Henry, very loved, and I'm certain he's looking down on us today, because I need to acknowledge, because he was a very important human being, and everyone who got to know him. Back to horse racing and Henry's experience. Henry, after finishing his commerce degree, needed to get on the bike and start learning about horse riding. He spent about 6 years with the illustrious Equinita boys, and then he went a couple of years with Hudson Conway Racing, which took him to Lloyd Williams, who was probably, at the time, Henry, the best trainer in Victoria, as well as one of the best owners in owning those Melbourne Cup winners that he was so good at. Henry, mother, Sally, is alive and well and is a great supporter. Henry's background in his own family, he has a partner and he has three children, including a set of twins. So Henry's got his hands full with Violet and Max and Harriet, and his partner Beck Gribble does give great support. So it gives you a little bit of background to Henry. There's a bit more to it than just the fact that we're starting to read a lot of good news about you, Henry. I do need to mention that your first winner, Mendyville, scored at Sandown back in 2013. So lots happened since 2013, Henry, so congratulations. But I don't want to take up any more. I want to introduce you to the Master Trainer, Henry Dwyer.
Well, thanks all for having me. I may as well sit down now. Quinn's sort of done the job and he's given you the whole speech, so thanks very much to Quinn for inviting me and inviting all Dave and Dave's mates and my schoolmates, which is terrific. I'm quite honoured to be here, actually. I think I was here 5 or 6 years ago, Quinn, and I mustn't have done a terrible job to be invited back, which is terrific. Thanks to Branko for organising logistics and Philip for having me here as well. And I thought the Rotary call was terrific, Adrian. Sadly, if every horse went across the line together in my line of work, we'd probably be out of a job. There wouldn't be any money around. So I thought it was very earnest and noble, though. So fair to say it's been a whirlwind 18 months for me. Quinn sort of outlined a little bit of what's happened, but in Australia we don't tend to travel horses too much. We've got such good prize money here and so many races. Basically, it's a big country with a lot of horses and a lot of trainers. There's not much need to travel, but with a certain horse, which was the case with my horse, a mare called Asfoora, you really do need to travel because there wasn't a lot of suitable races for her and the races were better options over there. I've done, I think, 17 Melbourne return trips over the last 18 months, so to say it's been a whirlwind's probably an understatement. Anyone needs any help with the vagaries of airport lounges or frequent flyer points or anything like that, I'm here to help. I've got a pretty good appreciation of it all these days, but while it's been taxing, it's been a terrific life experience, and I'd just like to share a few stories from the last 18 months. And Quinn did mention my lovely little wife Rebecca before, but there is a saying that the second hardest job in the world is a horse trainer, and the hardest job is being a horse trainer's wife, and she's probably testament to that because she's brought up our kids pretty much single-handedly the last 18 months, of which we've got a 7-year-old Violet and 5-year-old twins, Max and Harriet. So it does take a bit of doing, and as I said, Beck's done it all herself, so I'm very appreciative of her work as well. So I thought I'd just Quinn's given you a bit of background again about me, so I don't really need to touch on that. Interestingly, you did mention Dad there, who, as an aside, Dad was horrified when I informed the family I wanted to be a horse trainer when I was about 16 years old or 17 years old. He parted with private school fees for X amount of years and university fees for X amount of years, and to be told his son wanted to be a horse trainer was a bit of a slap across the face for his endeavours, but he came around, and it was actually fortuitous that the week before he died I trained my first winner that he was a part owner of, so that was quite a really nice little piece before he passed away, so that was good, and I'm sure he'd be obviously proud of what's happened in the last little bit and maybe see some benefit to those early decisions when I told him what was going to happen, much to his chagrin. Anyway, whirlwind 18 months, lots of trips overseas. I'll give you a bit of background about the horse because she's why I'm here, and she's sort of taken my career from a starting point 10 years ago where I had a heap of luck in the first 2 years of my career, and I thought, how easy is this and how long has this been going on? I had 2 Group 1 winners in the first 12 months of training, which is just unheard of, and you just expect those sort of things to continue. But alas, they don't, and I had 5 or 6 years of no Group 1 winners. We trained a steady stream of winners, but it is hard to maintain that sort of thing, and it wasn't until I got a call from a guy called Akram El Fakri about 4 years ago now. Akram's sons, Hyaf and Joseph, had been the year above me and the year below me at Xavier, and I didn't know them from a bar of soap, but at some stage I must have had some dealings with Akram, and Akram recounted meeting me at Xavier, and he said, I've got a couple of horses and I'd love you to train one, and I'd look a gift horse in the mouth at any stage of the equation, and happy to train horses for good people, for any people really, and Akram invited me up to his farm to inspect 2 fillies that had been passed in at the recent Adelaide Magic Million sale. And so the Adelaide Magic Million sale is where horses go that don't get into another sale. So you've got your Gold Coast Magic Millions, you've got your Melbourne Premier sale, your Sydney Easter sale, all your well-bred horses go to those sales, and the horses that go to Adelaide can't really find a home elsewhere. So Akram had 10 horses go through, and 2 of them didn't sell. And the 2 that didn't sell, he wanted me to take my pick of which one he wanted me to train. So he invited me up to his property at Euroa. He's got a little broodmare farm up there, and I was given the opportunity to pick between a Flying Artie filly, who was a young stallion, and an unencumbered filly, who was another stallion. And I rang Akram on the way home, and I said, I really appreciate the opportunity to pick between these 2 horses. The Flying Artie filly, she went to Adelaide, had a reserve of 30,000 on her, didn't get a bid, not a single bid. And she was a nice enough filly, but quite immature and bad-legged. The other filly went over there with a reserve of 20,000 and never got a bid. So that's how much people sort of thought of them at the time. They were just unwanted, basically. And I said to Akram, I'd love to train the unencumbered filly. You know, she's a nice, strong filly, and he was sort of a bit taken aback, and he said, I thought you'd choose the Flying Artie filly. And I said, well, I'm happy to train whatever you want me to train, Akram, but the reality is I'd probably like the other one better, but whatever you want. He said, I'd like you to train the Flying Artie filly, I really would. And so I had my chance to pick that filly at the sale, and I wasn't interested. I had my chance to pick her out of a paddock of 2, and I had no interest in training her, and all of a sudden I've ended up with her anyway. So there's got to be a fair bit of fate involved, and that was obviously Asfoora. Her humble beginnings was she was passed in for nothing, she was discarded in a paddock with 2 horses that I picked the other one, and I've still ended up with her, and she's winning races at Royal Ascot, Longchamp, York, the three of the biggest sprint races in the world. So that's the great thing about racing, and those of you that have been involved in racing in any capacity or owned a horse know how hard it is to find a good horse. And if it was as easy as going to the yearling sales and buying the most expensive horse, paying $1 million for a yearling, and those ones that were passed into the sales, they were no good, then nobody would do it, because the $1 million ones would cost $10 million and the $1,000 ones would never find a home. So the fact that our horse has gone overseas, won 14 races or whatever she's won $4 or $5 million in prize money, just makes it great for the industry, because people get a sense of hope that they can too breed a horse from nowhere and, you know, get a discarded horse and win races with it. There's heaps of other stories like it, like Takeover Target went over to Ascot years ago and did the same sort of thing. So that's what sort of I took out of the story, and that's my favourite part of it, was that she was a horse that was semi-unwanted, owned by a bloke that's been breeding horses for 20 years and never had a city winner, which is hard to do, but he hasn't had a great run. He's bred a lot of slow horses, and all of a sudden, if anyone deserves it, he's found a horse that deserves it. So he's outlaid a lot of money to get the horse over there and the rest of it. I think I did the maths on it. Last year it was about a $200,000 operation to get the horse there. Flights return were about $90,000 for the horse. Having a full-time staff member over there, that's about another $70,000 for the 8 months she was there. All my travel costs, all our staff's travel costs. So I think it came to about $280,000, $300,000, and I put a spreadsheet to Akram when I first suggested the idea of sending the horse over there, and like a good former accounting 1A student who nearly failed, I put a spreadsheet to Akram and told him how much it would cost, and probably blew out by 80% by the time I'd finished with all our travel costs. But I think we got about a $90,000 subsidy from Ascot to get over there, which helped. But if that horse didn't go over there and do something, we were probably out of pocket, or Akram, the owner, was probably out of pocket about $200,000, which was a fair leap of faith for a horse that was very much not really fancied to go over there and do well. So I suppose the starting point of the whole UK story is when I announced that the horse was going over there was a fair bit of negative sentiment from owners here and people that followed the game here. I remember sitting at Ballarat in the clocking tower where I spend most of my time in the morning, and I got an email from a guy, I won't say his name, but I got an email from a guy who'd actually owned a horse that had won at Royal Ascot 2 years earlier. And the email said, waste of time, waste of money, embarrassing our sprinters that have gone over there and gone well previously. And I sort of thought about it, and I thought, well, it came through at 8 o'clock on a Friday. He's probably been out all afternoon on the terps, and not that it's any excuse, but that might have been the reason why he'd sent the email. So, but it just sort of gave me a bit of a feeling and a bit of an appreciation what the overall sentiment was, and it was true, because nobody actually said that to me, except him, but it sort of, we weren't seen as a horse who should be spending all that money on taking overseas, and the owner was incredibly supportive, but almost to the extent that he was only supporting me because he didn't want to tell me I shouldn't be doing it, which really meant a lot to me, because it gave me a really good support and knowledge that he was behind me 100%, win, lose or draw. So that was why it was so important to win, because of his support. So we'd done a fair bit of work with the horse in Australia. She was at a stage where she'd had about 12 starts. She'd won 7 or 8 races, but she just couldn't crack it for a Group 1 here, just because she doesn't quite see out a strong 1,200 metres, or 6 furlongs as they call it over there. She's only a 1,000 metre specialist, and all our good races are 1,200 for sprinters. So we had to bite the bullet and take her over there. It was going to cost a lot of money. If I owned the horse, I wouldn't have done it. If 99% of owners in Australia owned the horse, they wouldn't have done it. But there was this one bloke, and this is the big part of the equation, that was happy to stump up the money for it, the owner, Akram, and that made the thing worthwhile and able to be done, really. And the other factors about, we struck 2 years in a row over there with very limited opposition. She won, but you've got to have a horse that can travel really well. You've got to have a year where there's no superstars over there, and you've got to have a bloke to fund it, which we did in Akram. So it all came together to be sort of like a perfect storm of factors to get her over there. And when she got over there, she just blossomed, really. She improved from what she was doing here to over there. We went to Royal Ascot with her at a second run over there. Once again, she'd had 1 run and she sort of finished midfield, and the daggers were out and the forks and the knives in the back about why we should and shouldn't be over there. But to the horse's credit, she really surprised us by winning at Royal Ascot, which is a thing only 7 Australian horses have ever done before in the history of Australian racing, and certainly none from as humble beginnings as her. So that sort of whetted the appetite, that win at Royal Ascot, to maybe try and do some new things. At the end of the day, being a horse trainer is a great job when you've got a good horse, and it's the worst job in the world when you haven't. Getting out of bed at 4:30 in the morning to spend every morning in Ballarat, freezing conditions, punching around a bunch of benchmark 58 horses that are going to Caston and Horsham the next week. It's not very exciting, and that's why sort of after those heady days of the first couple of years of my training careers, I probably needed a new challenge, and this sort of was the impetus for having a bit of a challenge. Even though it wasn't seen as something that probably most people would do, I just needed something to turn my mind to and give me a new challenge, and that was England. So went over there, life experiences. As a horse trainer, you don't get to travel much. We travel to Swan Hill for their carnival, we travel to Warrnambool, we go to the Brisbane Carnival if we're lucky. That's our yearly holiday, if you're lucky enough to have a runner up in Brisbane. So travelling overseas is a thing that you really miss out on. You work in stables from the age of 16 or 17, you work in long days, early mornings. You sort of miss that element of your life, and having a horse good enough to take overseas gives you that. I've more than made up for it in the meantime, as I said, but having the element of being able to take a horse overseas allows you to really see the world and travel around, and it just kept on growing from there, and me seeing new places and meeting new people, which turned out to be the king and queen when I was at Ascot. So that's a unique story in itself. We were saddling the horse up before the race, and probably the most nervous I've ever been. Obviously, you're having a run at Royal Ascot. It was about 34 degrees, so I was sweating bullets. We've got the big top hat on, the big thick jacket on, and you're trying to saddle the horse up before the race, and a bloke comes and taps you on the shoulder and says, "The king will see you now." And I didn't really know that was going to happen, so I was nervous enough as it was. I needed to get the horse saddled up, and I just politely said to the guy, I said, "Look, thanks very much, but he's just going to have to wait a second because I've got to saddle this horse up." Which, and in the honest truth, if the horse didn't get saddled up, it doesn't run. So I had priorities, and meeting the king at that point in time wasn't exactly one of them. So saddled the horse up, finished off. She's gone and walked into the mounting yard. They've ushered me over, shaken hands with the big fella. Lovely bloke, had a good chat. He went to Geelong Grammar back in the day. We compared notes about Geelong and Ballarat, and he wanted to know about the horse, but realistically he had no idea about racing. And then Camilla sidles up, and she's really, really sharp on it. So she knew exactly what horse they had racing for the week and which ones were winning and which ones were losing, and took a great interest in the horse. And they cut us off at that stage. It was just all pleasant conversation. At the end of it, I said, "Your Majesty, I'd love to stay and chat, but we've got things to do. And it'd be as good as it's been meeting you before the race, I'd rather meet you after the race when you're presenting the trophy." And he had a little chuckle and said, "Oh, we'll see what we can organise." And so, of course, the horses run past the line first and won easily, and we've gone back to the mounting yard, and he's there beaming, and he said, "I told you I could sort this out." And then he said, I actually had something on your horse, on your advice." I said, "Oh, terrific." So I was picturing him going up to the bookie with a note with his own head on it, and handing it to the bookie, and there's not too many people that can say they can do that. So that was a life experience, and the whole thing's been life experiences. So after Ascot, it was sort of a matter of whatever happens as a bonus, the job was done. and I thought the horse had done a good job. We ran her at Goodwood. She ran second 5 weeks later. She should have won, very unlucky, but at the time I was still on cloud nine. It didn't really matter. I was happy just to run second. We went to York 3 weeks later. I think she was an even money favourite. She ran a good race but couldn't win. She ran fourth. At that time, once again, I thought her job was done. She'd done a good job. She was a 5-year-old mare, probably deserved to go to stud, and I had a chat to Akram and said that was probably the case, and he said, well, it's been so much fun this year, I'd love to go on with it. If there's any chance she can race again next year, I'd love to do that. And I sort of thought about it, and she was physically sound, there's nothing wrong with her, so I thought, well, I've had a good enough time over here, why don't we spin the dice again? And once again, if I owned it, I wouldn't have paid up the money again, and if anyone else owned it, in all sense, they probably wouldn't have paid again, but Akram was willing to fund the operation, and I was happy to have another holiday, so it was terrific. The mare came back, she went back over there the next year, and once again we were just aiming to cover costs and not have to tell Akram we put a 200 grand hole in his pocket, and lo and behold, we sort of had a slow lead up to the season. She went to Ascot and didn't win this year, but she was able to, at her next run a bit better, and then we went to York, which is obviously the north of England. They've got the second biggest carnival in England, which is the Ebor Festival it's called. They've got a sprint there called the Nunthorpe Handicap, and that's probably the second biggest sprint race in England. And Group 1, she came out and won that quite easily, which was terrific. Once again, met new people, saw new places, and she's gone from being worth 4 million as broodmare to 8 million as a broodmare. I suppose it's only relevant if you're going to sell them though, and we had offers of any amount of money for her, but Akram, once again, true to his word, the mare was very special to his family and he wouldn't part with her for any cost, and he told them that. So he'd never been out of Australia except back to Lebanon. He is a second generation Lebanese migrant. He's a former taxi driver who had about 100 cabs back in the heady days of the 80s and early 90s before the deregulation and before Ubers came in. And the irony of that story will come back in a minute when I tell you about the French story, but he's a great Australian and a great Victorian, and he's an accountant by trade. He still has a couple of taxis, but he's not a billionaire, he's not a hugely wealthy individual, and for him to knock back offers of 7 and 8 and 9 million for a horse like that, mainly, I would say, because he didn't want to disappoint me in taking her away from me. It was a real sort of shot in the arm for me too, and a real sort of vote of confidence, which was great. So we got through York, we went to Ireland. It became apparent at that stage there'd never been an Australian trained horse win in Ireland or France. And so once again, that was like a red rag to a bull, and wanted me to do something that we hadn't done before and try something new. So we thought we'd go to Ireland and run a race called the Flying Five, which was a Group 1 race over there. And we had on the agenda a race in France as well called the Prix Labay, which is on Arc Day, which is Melbourne Cup, Breeders' Cup, Royal Ascot, Arc Day. They're probably the 4 biggest race days in the world. So let alone be competing these days is a huge thing, let alone winning. So went to Ireland. She didn't perform there. She had a soft track which she didn't like, but we still had confidence she could go to France and be competitive there. If not win, at least give us an experience of being in France and once again meeting new people and having a good time, which we invariably do. So went to France, and everything was going swimmingly. The other part of this story is that the horse had been over there 6 months the previous year and 6 months this year, and there was a girl looking after her full-time, Chanel, who's one of my employees. And Chanel had been there and done the most amazing job with this horse, and her results were testament to Chanel. Never put a foot wrong, never did anything wrong. The horse was glowing, everything's been perfect. And when I first sent Chanel over there with the horse, I sort of said to her, and anyone that runs a business and employs people understands that you can't micromanage your staff the whole time. You've got to let them sort of be. You can't ring them and try and check on everything. Just hope that they make the right decisions, and the decisions they don't make right, or the mistakes they make aren't big enough ones that might completely bring the house of cards down. So I said to Chanel when she went over there, I said, you're over there by yourself. Obviously you're in contact with me, but you're going to have to make some decisions. At times you're going to make the wrong decisions, at times you're going to make mistakes, because we all make mistakes. But I just need you to say that any time you do make a mistake, I need to know about it so I can fix things. It's not a big deal. No one's going to go crook because you're trying your best and you might make a mistake, but everything will be fine. No matter how big a mistake it is, I need to know about it so I can alter things going forward and change things. And so we're on the way to the races at Longchamp on Arc Day. So we've been to some pretty big race meetings, but this was probably the biggest. And I get a call in the car from Chanel. And I'm thinking, this isn't good, because she wouldn't be ringing me unless there was a problem. So I'm thinking scenarios in my head. I was about to answer the phone. I said, I reckon she's forgotten the colours, the silks, the jockey wears, which normally isn't a big deal. If you're in a maiden at Mornington, they put the club colours on them and you just run and it doesn't matter. If they win, you have to apologise profusely to the owner for not having their colours in the winning photo. Akram had travelled obviously halfway around the world to see his mare run. This was the second time he'd been out of Australia since Ascot last year, and I was going to have to front up and tell him that she'd forgotten the colours. And I said to her when I answered, "Oh, you've forgotten the colours, haven't you?" And she said, No, I haven't. And I said, "Oh, it's good." And she said, "Remember that conversation we had before I left last year, and you said, no matter how big a mistake it is, you need to know about it." And I said, "Yeah, right, this is good. Well, I've forgotten the horse's passport." And I thought, okay, it's not a big deal, because what happens then is if we're in Australia and we forget the horse's ID card, as we have here, we just go to the stewards, tell them, they might give us a fine, they might give us a slap on the wrist, no dramas. So I had full faith in my own ability to go and sweet talk the French stewards into saying we're right to run, everything will be fine, no worries. However, when I went and saw the French stewards and told them the news that we'd forgotten the passport, they weren't as receptive to my humour and good Australian banter as I thought they would be. And as it turned out, they weren't going to let us run. So we had to go into panic mode and try and organise to get the passport from Chantilly, where the horse had been based, where we'd left the passport, to Longchamp, which is, on a good day, about an hour and 20 minutes across France. On a good day, probably not being Arc Day and probably not being the weekend of the Paris Fashion Festival, where there's also a marathon going on around Longchamp with roads closed. So I'd done that drive that morning, and it'd taken me an hour 40 minutes. I'd done it the day before, it'd taken me an hour 50 minutes. The race was at 2:50 p.m. The horses were due to leave the mounting yard at 2:40 p.m, and the stewards had told me, and this is them being kind in their opinion, that they'd give me until the horses left the mounting yard to get the passport there. So we had a grand total of 54 minutes to get the passport there from Chantilly, which is undoable, just completely undoable, but we had to try. So the irony of the situation being that, as I mentioned before, Akram formerly owned 100 taxis and was heavily involved in the taxi industry and had a massive stoush with Uber when they came in, and the only way we could get the passport there was in an Uber. So I ordered an Uber from Chantilly. We had an Uber driver named Mamadou, and I messaged our new friend Mamadou and said, "There's a huge sling in this for you if you can get this ID or this passport here in 54 minutes." To which he obviously knew it was impossible, but he was willing to try and break a few speed limits and get a few tickets on the way to get it there. And so I was out the front of the racecourse with the Uber app open. I had the head vet next to me with his walkie-talkie ready to radio through to the stewards. I had my assistant trainer and Chanel in there saddling the horse up. So we saddled the horse up as if it was going to run, but fully knowing it probably wasn't going to run. I'd already had that conversation with Akram. I was following the Uber app on my phone, and most of the time, if you know Ubers, they get longer, not shorter. So it started as an hour 5. Then it was 64 minutes, 63 minutes, 59 minutes, 56 minutes. And you watch it stop at the lights and you go, come on, hurry up. And all of a sudden, he's roared round the corner, this bloke Mamadou in his little Toyota Corolla. And I've looked at the thing, and there was 1 minute to spare when he got there. So the bloke's got Mamadou's got the passport to the head vet. The head vet has radioed through to the chief steward. The other horses were leaving the mounting yard. As he walkie-talkied through, she was allowed into the mounting yard and she was allowed out of the mounting yard. So it wasn't until 4 minutes before she actually raced that we knew we were having a run of that day. And that was, as I said, the biggest day of my life to date. That was the first time an Australian trained horse was a chance of winning a race in France. And lo and behold, from not thinking we're running 5 minutes out to loading in the barriers to coming out and winning the race invariably, there was a huge roller coaster of emotions and a huge day in general. So, as you'd imagine, we were all pretty chuffed after the race. So that was pretty exciting, and we celebrated accordingly in a piano bar in the middle of France till 5:30 a.m. the next morning, which is what you do when you win a race in France. So, so that's just part of the experience, and a few anecdotes from the trip. But I get a huge amount of people, kids, young people coming up to me and asking if they should be a horse trainer. And as my father said to me back in the day, I give them the fatherly advice of you'd have to be crazy, but it's moments like that that make it worthwhile. And one of my favourite sayings in the world, and probably in relation to horse training, is that you can't appreciate the view from the highest mountain without going through the lowest valley. And the amount of low valleys you have in horse training, with horses injuring themselves and having to break bad news to people, it makes it all worthwhile having those big moments like that. So just a snapshot of what I do, I suppose, and a snapshot of the last couple of years, but I hope you've got something out of it. And thanks to Quinn for having me here today, and everyone else for listening.
Bloody hell, what excitement! Thank you, Henry. What a great film. Stay here for good. What a great film to actually hear the story. A few of us did read the story, Henry, but it wasn't as exciting as having you tell us here today. He is now called the Master Trainer, as I introduced him. Please make sure that you are going to be involved in horse racing. There's only one trainer, Henry Dwyer. Now, Henry, we normally give a little present, but if you're going to see if someone's got a question, we've got room for just one, I think. We have one question for Henry. Oh, David Scalzo.
Just one. What shilling did you give the Uber driver?
Funnily enough, he's been a little bit stiff actually, so when he got up there before the race, we were obviously very happy with his work, but we hadn't yet won the race, so we weren't as benevolent as we would have been after the race. So I did give him €200 cash, so the Uber fare was €70, and then he got 200 on top of that, which he was pretty chuffed about, as you'd imagine. After the race, I've gone back to the Uber app and tried to put a tip in, to which I've typed in €500. And unfortunately for Mamadou, the Uber app has cut me off at 50. You can't tip more than 50 over the app. So he's had a shocker, Mamadou.
David Scalzo.
When you won the first time at Ascot, people were down at the horse. Did attitudes change straight away, to the horse and what you've done and the whole effort, or did it sort of take really until this year and she repeated it 2 or 3 times to change?
The attitude at the time was not so much that we were a good horse, it was more that the opposition was bad. And that didn't sully it, but that's what we'd been saying the whole time along while we were going over there, because we knew the opposition wasn't what it normally is over there. And we'd sort of had that as part of our plan, but nobody else appreciated that she wasn't, because Black Caviar went over there, Nature Strip went over there, they knew she wasn't as good as them, and we knew she wasn't as good as them, but they didn't give us the credit for knowing the opposition was weaker. And the whole thing about horse training is placing your horses where they can win against substandard opposition. We could run the second worst horse in Australia against the worst horse in Australia, and they're going to win a race, but they're still the second worst horse in the world. But that's the challenge of horse racing, placing your horse in the best company for them anyway. So it did change. My initial thought when they went over the line was almost relief, I suppose, just to silence a few doubters and that sort of stuff. But she's been a huge hit over there. They've really adopted us as their own, and they love having us on TV over there. Everyone comes to the races when we're racing, and it's fostered a bit of Aussie-British rivalry, and it's been really good for them. They tell me more than me, but it's been pretty good for me too. So.
Well done, well done. So Henry, I started to say that we normally give a token gift from Wilderness Wear, which is a product. Oh, you've got it there. Oh, there we are. There it is. These are the Australian socks made by our friend, past president.
And I was feeling a bit self-conscious when I came up here today after the rotary sock comment earlier, because I couldn't find a pair of socks, and I've gone to the light blue numbers, which don't sort of suit. So if you've got a set of socks for me, that's a terrific result.
Well done, well done. Please, set it.
Thanks,
okay. It's my opportunity here to thank our visitors and guests, also the MC, Deb Finney, and also Barbara Runders for her talk this morning. We thank everybody for our recepting crew that put this place together, and Adrian, a very, very, very special to you. What a damn, call for the races. Next week we are invited to a very special lunch at number 35 for the launch of Growing Futures in Timor-Leste, which is a small town, a city that we normally support here. A major new Rotary Melbourne-led project creating lasting livelihoods, stronger communities and a healthier planet. This initiative partners will be Ray Martak's 50-year plan to plant 100 million trees across Timor-Leste, generating certified carbon income for farming families and restoring land devastated by deforestation. It's a proven approach that turns environmental action to real sustainable income for rural communities. We will hear from an expert panel, including Amy Stevenson, CEO of X-Band Foundation, and Peter Chu from Monash University about Rotary clubs in our region can play a vital role in expanding this success story and how support right now can help Timorese farmers building a great future for generations to come. If I'm not correct, I think we've actually got our carbon credits from Timor-Leste in the past, if I'm not wrong. So don't miss it. Bring a guest and join us as we help grow futures in East Timor. Please.